And we have something very interesting going on in the form of the Grayzone, with Kit Klarenberg as lead author. People who watch us for regularly will know that they come up with some quite interesting exposés. We have to stress here that the lady on screen is accused by Kit Klarenberg and the Grayzone of being a former or current MI6 officer or SIS officer. We have no proof of that either way, and I am withholding judgment on the matter. But the lady on screen at the moment, Alicia Kearns, is now the chairwoman of the British Parliament's Foreign Affairs Select Committee, a very powerful role. She claims she's faced misogyny and age discrimination because, as a 30-something woman, she's not the traditional type to chair that very influential committee. But the Grayzone is asking whether a war is being pushed in Kosovo by her acting as a British state agent. We'll try to stay away from the personality of Alicia Kearns, but there is some detail we do have to show here. For example, Alban Kurti, the premier of Kosovo, is not being told what to do much by the British government, which has suddenly started slapping him on the wrist for various ethnic problems that there still are in Kosovo 15 years after its unilateral declaration of independence and recognition by most Western countries. And the Grayzone article by Klarenberg suggests that Alicia Kearns has a role to play here and calls her a veteran psychological warfare specialist and a British intelligence operative. Once again, we do not know whether this claim is well-founded or not. Let's go on, therefore, to the detail of what the Grayzone says. One thing it does is bring up a piece which or an extract of a speech given by Alicia Kearns in a debate just a month ago, the 4th of July, on Srebrenica Memorial Week. Srebrenica, of course, is in Bosnia, not in Kosovo or Albania. But here she is really laying it on thick and saying that Serbia must be punished. It's the source of all the ills in the Balkans, effectively. I am paraphrasing here. And she made a startling allegation here about weapons being smuggled from Serbia to Orthodox churches in ethnic Serbian northern pockets of Kosovo in ambulances. This was then denied. If we go on to the next slide, it actually required KFOR, the peacekeeping forces in Kosovo, and later the British ambassador as well, to say we have no evidence of that. Go on to the next slide, and you will see again that this was denied by the British ambassador. But first, this slide. These are the details, which we won't go into all the detail on Alicia Kearns' alleged links to James Le Mesurier of the White Helmets fame. And her claim to fame is that in about a decade ago, just under a decade ago, she spent 2 years very busily promoting a Foreign Office campaign on social media and elsewhere, which was called UK Against Daesh. And as head of that cell, she had her spookery, it is the allegation. There's also a tie over to Torchlight Group with GCHQ connections, which Mike Robinson, who's off on his summer holidays at the moment, has encouraged our audience to look into the possibly irregular funding of by the Foreign Office. Here's the clincher for it, really, that the British ambassador had to respond to this speech and say, despite what the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Committee said in Parliament, we see no evidence that this is going on. I don't take sides in this, but you've got Foreign Office and parliamentarians specialising in Kosovo making directly opposite claims as to what's going on as ethnic tensions continue to be a major problem, having seen in recent months mayors trying to take their seats of office and being attacked, and cross-border kidnaps of officials. And at this stage, I would like to bring on board an interesting new friend of UK column, who is Arbër Loxha, whom I have recently got to know, who is a journalist in Pristina in Kosovo. Arbër, you're very welcome to the programme. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is, again, staying away from the allegations against Alicia Kearns personally, what effect did this article have on you, reporting the tensions in your own homeland? Have you seen inter-ethnic relations deteriorate in the way described? And what are the reasons you assess for any change in ethnic relations in Kosovo?
Thank you for inviting me, Alex. It's quite interesting to read such article, which is, interesting also to interpret the situation in terrain in the north of Kosovo, because recently in May we have seen some, movement from a political elite of Kosovo, and also how political elite in Kosovo calls different ethnic groups that work in north of Kosovo with the support of Belgrade. And there was escalating tensions, and also there were held mayor elections for which Albanians with not the majority of Serbian people participating on those elections won the elections, and Prime Minister Kurti wanted those mayors to be installed in municipality objects, and this really raised tensions between Serbian population there. And what happened was also that those elections were legitimized by the EU and the US, also the UK. And Prime Minister Kurti claims were that these were legitimate elections, and therefore we need mayors to work from the municipality objects, for which Serbian population, which did not take part in the elections, refused. And these were the tensions. And once I read the article, I could have seen that after Kurti moved with installing the new mayors, he was not supported by U.S., especially from Secretary Blinken, which condemned the government of Kosovo and called the escalation on their part. Therefore, you could have reflect where did Kurti get the support and why he was not coordinated with American, let's say, government and ambassador, which usually happened with the political elite, politicians and the people in power in Kosovo. So it's quite also shocking to hear such allegations, but until it's proved, it's also very interesting also to read.
Now, you mentioned there in your response the US and its role supporting certain politicians and the UK. People might be thinking, but the UK is small fry. What's its involvement? Well, we blitzed through Alicia Kearns just there in the segment, but sharp-eyed viewers will have noticed that she was saying that the mechanism she wishes Britain to use to come down hard on Serbia at the moment is the Quint, a very informal group that it doesn't even have a standing in international law, no secretariat or treaty basis to it, which itself is a derivative of the contact group for the Balkans minus Russia. So that's the background to that. Now, Kosovan statehood is now 15 years old, and of course it's unacknowledged by many parts of the world, most of Latin America, Asia, Africa, the Russian Federation, even 3 EU member states. But Kosovo is making its way. What's your assessment of Kosovo's current viability as a state, given this arrangement? And as you answer, we will be playing out silently. We'll start it now, I think. We'll be playing out footage of Prime Minister Alban Kurti, whom you mentioned here, who was making a speech very recently, a month ago. An opposition MP put a picture of Pinocchio on his rostrum, alleging that he was a liar. One of his own allies took it away and ripped it up. And as you will see, an oppositionist then came up to the podium and threw a bottle of water over Prime Minister Kurti and his ally, prompting a general brawl and the involvement of his bodyguards. Kurti always seems to have heavy bodyguards. I discussed this with you recently, and you suggested that Kurti had a background as a bruiser. Here's a close-up of what went on, and that when he was an oppositionist, he would have done the same thing or did the same thing in Parliament. But stepping aside again from the personality, just as we did with Alicia Kearns, what's going on here with the viability of Kosovo as an overwhelmingly ethnic Albanian de facto and, to some cases, de jure state? How well served are you by your own political class?
Kurti was for a long time in opposition, and therefore, once he got into power, he was called that he got into power with populism agenda. And he was very active as a leader of opposition, and he usually used these kind of techniques to intimidate his counterparts. Therefore, this kind of thing that happened in Parliament is not new, because Kurti's party did to Prime Minister Mustafa 5 or 6 years ago the same, and the interesting part were that why the majority of people were reacting to such actions when they did not react when Kurti was doing it to his counterparts. Anyhow, I think people of Kosovo these 15 years have been served, decent. I would not say really well. We have same problems as all countries in Balkans have. Corruption is high. But now things are started to improve, and the relationship between Kosovo and other countries around, except Serbia, is excellent. But I would call it that in these 15 years, we could have done better, that's for sure. And Kosovo is getting more recognition now in EU with visa liberalization that recently moved forward, and people of Kosovo will travel in visa-free in Europe starting January 1st. And I think it was done something better these years in order to be granted such, I would call it a favor from EU, because they were holding Kosovo isolated for all those years, despite that Albania, North Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia were granted visa liberalization. I think the political situation played its role. And one of the people who played, let's say, majorly in this kind of situation were the Kurdi opposition party, which really blocked some. Let's say, if we can go back, Kurdi blocked the ratification of demarcation with Montenegro, and Kurdi also were part of blocking the association of Serb municipalities, which Prime Minister Mustafa struck a deal with EU intermediaries. So these were the Kurdi movements that kind of held Europe, standing and keeping Kosovo waiting for the visa liberalization process that were due in 2015. But I think we can do way better with our political elite and other stuff regarding people of Kosovo being served better.
Thank you very much again for that, Arbër. I hope that you will be able to stay around, and for our paid subscribers in extra time, we can go into more detail on the background to the ethnic Albanian history in both Kosovo and Albania, and discuss our recent meeting there in Durrës in Albania. So I hope you will stay on there.
Yeah, I would gladly do that.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. Well, we're